I'm going to call our special meeting to order. I guess, do we want to just get into the bylaws? Elisa, you requested this meeting, so what was your thoughts when you?
Clarity. I mean,
Okay.
it's more, I have some questions and I'm just not sure on how to get answers, so I thought perfect to do this. Like for the articles, thank you, 6. I just want clarity. We didn't do that last year, so I'm confused on the nominations and the way that we do it. We did not do that last year. So, and that was my first year on the board. So I just want clarification of why, if July is our fiscal year and we pick chairman and the whole board in January, then why did we not have another election in July?
We didn't pick in January of last
We
year.
did.
No, we did not.
You got elected in January. She stepped
No.
down.
No, she
It
did
wa-
not. No,
It wasn't in January.
it wasn't.
There
It
was-
was this time. It's always been this time.
There were nominations at the March meeting in Liberty, because it was so hot, that's why I remember it. And then I think they were officially voted on in May, is my understanding.
It was our first meeting because I had no idea who anybody was.
No,
Which would
No.
have been the March meeting.
because we didn't have a
Because-
meeting every month.
Yeah,
Then y'all changed to meeting every month.
Go back and read your minutes.
But that's still not July.
The officer takes office in July.
So there was a nominee committee?
Yes. In the past years, it hasn't.
The entire board has,
Yeah, the entire board has had a voice in it. The chair hasn't had elected a committee. The entire board had a voice, because a lot of things have been, if Susan, with a lot more informal, and we're trying to improve everything and make everything more professional, but.
and in the past, for a while, we had a hard time even having a quorum.
Correct.
Right.
For anything to be passed. We would not have enough board members present to pass anything.
Oh, at one meeting.
Yeah, and
I mean, there were
that-
3 meetings at least when I started, and that's when a meeting was every other month, that there was not a quorum. And then there was not a quorum after I started, so they were struggling.
we were struggling.
And,
So this year is technically like the first time that we really have a full board, except for we do not have a secretary.
Well, she just rotated off. We had one, but we don't right now.
So
The only
how
time we
does
use a
that-
secretary is when we go into an executive session. And then we would, if we were to go into executive session before the June nomination or May nomination, we would ask, or I would ask one of you to be the secretary and take the minutes of the executive session, because the clerk does not go into the executive session. But we have not had an executive session. That is the only thing the secretary does.
Karen was our secretary.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, okay. I'm sorry, I guess I was thinking more, I was looking at what they're supposed to be doing here, and on the descriptions in the state library board on what they did, and I thought the secretary did, I thought there was more that the secretary did. Karen just chose not to do that.
Oh, no.
Because she said that she did not want to.
Oh, no, she wouldn't have been secretary then.
But she did state she didn't want to do the minutes, and the secretary's job is to do the minutes.
She just is joking when she says she didn't want to do the minutes during executive session. That was like, have you been in an executive session?
No,
No.
but I thought the secretary was supposed to do the minutes.
Our clerk does the minutes. And if the
Lena
clerk's
does.
not here, then
So I'm
Cassie
doing the
does the
minutes.
minutes. The secretary of the board does not do the minutes for our meeting. We have a clerk to do that. That's Lana does that.
So, will we this year actually have a nominating committee, do you suppose? I mean.
Yes,
Yeah, so we're gonna actually follow through with it.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
But before, there was like me, Susan, Danny was here, and maybe one other person, but because nobody came.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just looked back through the minutes from 21 to now, and there's only twice elections in 4 years. So, yeah, and it was, when I came on, it was
Sparse.
slim, yeah,
It was.
as far as,
And Danny, you remember, we couldn't pass a lot of stuff because we just wouldn't have the quorum to be here to do it.
But typically, at the March meeting, which is the next meeting, it's when that nomination process would take place. So if you did want to be nominated for something or to serve in any role, I would let Lori know. Because she's in charge of putting together the nominating committee.
Okay. I guess my whole memory of that, because I remember sitting there and Susan nominated Lori, and Lori nominated Susan, and then Hap was treasurer, and then Karen was reinstated, and it was all done in like 5 seconds. So when you said a nominee committee, I didn't realize, because we didn't know anybody, and Hap was new, like, and it just happened so fast on that meeting that I don't even remember there being a committee at all.
What was the committee? Who was on
The
the
entire
committee?
board.
The entire board.
The entire board? But don't the
So I was on the
That-
committee and didn't know it
That had been,
before,
yes.
previous.
Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't a formal committee, just everybody on the board had a chance to nominate whoever they wanted to.
And then if you remember, we came back the next meeting and said, because there was
a question.
a question, we asked, is there
Yeah,
anybody
'cause it was
else who
so
wants to
crazy
do
and
it?
quick.
So,
And it wasn't a question on wrong, it was a question on how, like, like what?
and then people said no, so,
And I offered to step down, do whatever, because there was a question as to why. And I made that offer to step down as vice chairman, and
It's-
it was said no. But also, if you'll remember that Liberty meeting, when all of this happened, there was a lot of other things going on
Well, yeah.
too.
The room was packed.
The
and
room was
Fox
packed,
was
we
there.
had people out in the parking lot, there was.
the sheriff had to go out.
The sheriff was called to the parking lot. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on at that meeting.
But this is according, from now on, this is the way we're doing it?
Yes.
Okay.
And hopefully, we won't go back to a board that's very sparse. I mean, this has been great that people show up for the meetings.
The article says to nominate and recommend, I'm not sure why both those words are in there, but a chairman, a vice chairman, and a secretary treasurer. So the nominating committee decides on one person for each of those roles, according to the way this is written. It does not specifically say that other nominations can be accepted, but I assume that that's the case, right?
I think that's what had happened over the years, that everybody had put forward their nominees. But if we want to go strictly by this now, then it would, am I answering your question? Whether the chair can nominate a
No, what I mean is, so the committee brings to the board a single name for each of these positions, according to this.
Yeah.
A chairman, vice chairman, and secretary treasurer, okay. So
And
here's-
what if there's two people
and
that
now we
want
got
one
three.
position?
So they bring that to the board, but the provision for other people making nominations.
There doesn't need to be a provision because the board is using Robert's rules. And so what Robert's rules basically assigns here, right, for small teams, this is a small entity, right? And we're lucky enough to have 7, but it's still small. You know, normally Robert's rules is so that a group of 500 people can have a fair meeting, where the majority and the minority will both have the fair opportunity to be heard, right? That's it, just the opportunity to have whatever the term is, gentlemanly dialogue about an issue where everyone gets a fair commentary period. But you don't have to nominate a committee if you've only got so many folks where everybody is functionally the committee. It doesn't mean that you can't have like 2 people that want to contest for it in front of the open room if somebody's dumb enough to want to do that, right? Because the reality is you should decide these things beforehand so nobody's going to get embarrassed by getting skunked in an election for the chairman. If you don't have 4 votes, then shut up and sit down, you know? I mean, because it just doesn't do anything good for the unanimity of leadership in the organization to have 2 people sniping each other to be the chairman. You know you don't have the votes, then, you know, then let it go.
So do you
Try to
think-
develop the votes the next time. This says at least 1 month, so you got at least 1 month. That means you could do it 20 months ahead of time if you want to. But by Robert's rules, which is very, you know, is very specific about small groups and kind of vague because small groups don't have you don't have 1,000 people trying to volunteer to be, you know, right? You've got 4 people that are showing up, and clearly they know they're going to be one of the officers for it, right? So now it's just who wants to hold this hot potato. And, you know, part of the reason why you give the chairman the chance to do the schedule is so you don't end up with a camel. You know what a camel is? It's a horse designed by committee, right? So the chairman puts together, you know, the schedule. It gives them a good reason to want to do that extra work because they have a, you know, pretty good idea of like how to architect the dialogue so that things are going to be functional and productive. We have Robert's rules. There's some Toastmasters has some great programs on the internet for Robert's rules. But if you know, this thing's going to be 700 inches thick. If for every little minor detail we write a rule for it.
So are you saying we don't really necessarily even have to have a committee?
I think we should all get on our knees when we get home and thank God that this thing's only 2 sentences long. I think that's what that we should do, because I mean, then we have the freedom to not have to come here and spend all night long on some minor issue about, well, wasn't Joe Bob at that meeting? Well, I don't remember Joe Bob at that meeting, but how did we have that meeting? It's like, go back and read your minutes, and then at the end of the day, if that date came and went and you didn't publicly say, like, you know, when are we going to have this decision made, or are we going to have this vote? Canceled before I left. We didn't do a review of Ken like we're supposed to do, right? We don't do the review of Ken when you're going to have such a huge turnover, because what are you going to tell them? And let the other folks, when they come in, do it. So they'll have it in 3 or 4 months. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if we start getting into this thing where we're all like a group, this is a governmental body, if we're going to try to litigate every single sentence about something saying, you know, man, this stuff gets to be really difficult to do. Can't get anything done.
It does strike me as a little odd that you have a 3-member committee, we have a 7-member
Yeah.
board,
You can't have a,
and they convene and decide on a chairman, vice chairman, and secretary treasurer, one of which is likely to be on that committee because there's only seven people. And then it makes no provision for somebody nominating somebody from the floor, so to speak. So but I mean, we're kind of stuck with this, I mean, as it stands right now, but
She wanted
one of
to-
those people on the committee could be nominated for one of these positions, presumably. Yeah, even though that's a little odd.
Robert's Rules does give you, but Robert's Rules specifically says that any member of standing can make a nomination.
Yeah.
And so we don't have to say here in this clearly simplified bylaws, like you said, it's, you know, you've got the entire book there to tell you what, how to interpret, you know, the 10 Commandments, right?
Yeah.
But we have a whole book. It's a Robert's Rules book for how to make Article 6 work. Man, there's every rule that you can imagine in there. And like he said, like Les said, if you really know the rules, you know, you can create complete havoc,
Right.
right?
I think the easiest solution is if somebody wants to be one of these positions, just let the so-called committee know and say.
Or there will be no committee, right? We're just
Right.
going to take nomination.
And that's how
You could just take-
that's how the board has been
In the
operating.
past.
In the past,
Yeah.
right. And I think that's the most reasonable thing to do. We don't need a committee of 3 people when there's a board of 7.
Right.
To make a decision, which sounds like in this article, well, they come up with one name and that's it. So it almost is a foregone conclusion. So what would we do? So a month,
We're not gonna have like a committee, people will just nominate.
nominate people from the floor, basically.
Right,
Yeah.
like we've
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody understands, right?
But like any good group of sensible people, you call around and say, hey, would you vote for me to be chairman? And if you only get 3 yeses, then don't run for chairman.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, it doesn't, at the end of the day, she's got employees, right? This is the whole reason for the Robert's Rules is fairness. At the end of the day, she's got employees. So if we have a big scrap over who gets to be the chairman in public, and we're all raising Cain because you're not liberal enough, or you're not conservative enough, or whatever craziness, at the end of the day, all the employees see that, right? And so you know, I'm not trying to hijack the thing here, right? But I haven't been on like 20 boards. The employees of the organization need to understand that we're all going to be rowing. Each of us might want to stop at a different port, but we're all going to paddle to the port we agreed on. That's important because you're all in the same ship, right? If you don't like the port you're going to and you're standing in the back complaining about it and whining about it and trying to get people to jump off the ship with you, right? You know, how does that move the ship? So when you get to the next port, then you have a discussion about the port that comes after. And so the whole thing is follow the Robert's Rules, read the Robert's Rules, take a class in the Robert's Rules, and then you'll see, as simple as we can possibly get it, and then we do sensible things for the sensible good of the organization. And you'll see school board things, and I can just tell you from experience, county council too, somebody in the back of the school board meeting will say, I do not agree with this, you guys understand why I don't agree with it, and the reasons why I don't agree with it, but clearly this thing's going to pass, and I'm going to vote with you with the understanding that you understand that I don't agree with everything we're doing. I've had my voice, right? That's the Robert's Rules piece that keeps you from getting excluded if you're worried about being excluded because you have a minor view. You're trying to preserve the relationship and trust so that you can inch it towards more sane, right? And then you
Work
come
as
back later
one.
on. So just, if it's not explicitly said here, we're not on a submarine. On a submarine, you can only do what the rule book says because you will drown real quick, right? In an airplane, you can do what you can get away with because you may or may not crash. All right, so in our case, right, just be helpful for this, and then, you know, if it's worked in the past, let it keep working.
So at the July meeting, if you want to be nominated for one of these positions, you let somebody know.
No,
It's before that.
The March.
March.
Oh, we're going to do it, March?
Or before, if you know now, start like Henry said, you know.
Well,
Get the votes.
what I'm saying, the vote is going to take place in July, right? So there's really not much.
The vote takes place in May.
At least 1 month prior.
May.
First meeting of the new fiscal year,
May.
July.
So
It's-
you vote in May and it takes effect in July.
I'm sorry, okay,
Yeah.
so we'll do it in May.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And so you just let somebody know.
Yes,
Well, since we're going every other month now,
yes.
March, we will discuss this.
Nominations.
Yeah. And then.
And then you have time to think about
We'll
it.
vote on it, and then it'll take effect.
Vote takes place in May, and then it takes,
Which although there was a lot going on and y'all were new, that is what we did last year.
yeah, okay.
Okay, any other discussion on the bylaws? Nancy, do you have anything?
I move we close this meeting. I think we're done.
Okay, do I have a second motion?
I have a question, but.
Okay, no, go ahead. Go
I don't know
ahead.
if I wanted to ask it.
Okay, you want
No, I'm just messing with you.
okay, yeah. Like, when we want something, request something on the agenda, can we do that? Do we need to vote on it now for March, or can we just send it to you and you discern whether to get it on?
To me and to Stephanie. In case like something is going on with me and I don't see it, or I don't open my email for a week, Stephanie will see it and then she will call me and say,
I don't make the decision. It's
right,
Maurice's
she will
handing
call me and say.
information.
Yeah.
I'll-
She will know if something is going on with me because I will tell her, Stephanie, I'm having brain surgery. No.
Just wanted to make sure.
Okay. That was a joke.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm laughing inside.
Okay. Hysterically, I can tell.
Do we have to?
Okay, now do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay.